What's going on, guys? So in the first video, we created a droplet with DigitalOcean, which is essentially a remote server, and we connected to it through SSH. In the second video, we did some initial setting up of the server. We created a new user underneath the root user, which is more safe to work from. We ensured that the new user has root privileges when adding sudo before a command, which stands for super user do. We also set up a basic firewall where we allow an SSH connection, and all other connections are blocked by default unless we unblock them for something specific. In this video, we will connect to GitHub from our server through SSH. We'll clone a repository onto the server. We'll install Node.js on the server. We'll run the production build of our React application, and we'll serve that app from our server and connect the domain to that server. So we'll deploy our application. Let's get into it.
Let's get it on!
So I'm on my local machine and my local terminal. We'll connect back to our server like we did in the previous video by running SSH. The new user we created under the root user, which for me was Andrew, then the @ symbol, followed by the remote server's IP address. We'll enter in our password. And you'll see that we're now connected to our remote server, essentially in the terminal of our server now. We're terminally in terminals. We're like the Terminator. It's like the midterm exam. Okay, I should definitely stop. So our Ubuntu server should come equipped with Git. So I'll run git -- version. Beautiful. Now we can't clone a repository onto our server yet because we have to connect to GitHub with SSH. To do that, I'll follow this documentation. I'll put a link to this in the description. By the way, I'll also put a link in the description to the other two videos that I did before this. So we'll copy this command and we'll be switching out the example email with our GitHub email address. Paste that in here. Enter the file in which to save the key. This is the default location, so we'll go with that. So I'll just hit enter, and then enter a passphrase. Enter the same one again. And it says your identification has been saved here, and then in this .ssh folder, which is a hidden folder. Any folder with the dot in front of it is a hidden folder. And then the public key has been saved in the .ssh/file.pub. That's the public key. The key fingerprint is this, and the key's random art image is here. So this creates a new SSH key using the provided email as a label. When prompted, we hit enter to accept the default location. We type the secure passphrase, and now we'll add our SSH key to the SSH agent. So we'll start the SSH agent in the background and copy this. Well, hopefully, at least, depending on your environment, you might have to run one of these. Okay, looks like that worked. And then we'll add our SSH private key to the SSH agent. And they're saying if you had a different file name than the default, you would want to change that here. Paste that in there, hit enter. Enter in the passphrase, identity added. And then you'll add the SSH key to your account in GitHub. So you want to copy it to your clipboard. We'll run this cat command to show it. So that is all of this. Copy that. And then you'll go to your profile photo and settings and access. Go to settings. And then access here, we have the SSH and GPG keys. And then new SSH key. Give it a title. My server's on DigitalOcean. And then we'll paste the key in here and add SSH key. Enter in the password here. And there we go. Our SSH key has been added. So we should be good to clone the repository now. And the repository that I'm going to be cloning I'll clone this repository where I fetch and display a random quote. It's from another video I made where I set up a custom hook in React called useFetch. And you can pass in a URL to fetch data from, and then all of the logic for error handling, loading state, and grabbing the data is all in this separate file, which you can import into another file that you need to fetch data from. I'll toss a link to that video in the description as well. So we'll go to code, and then for clone here, we'll make sure we're on SSH. Hit copy. Go back into our terminal, do git clone, and paste that in there. Hit enter. And this is our first time connecting, so it's going to ask if for sure that we want to, and we'll say yes. And we see that it added GitHub as one of the known hosts. So that's cloned. We'll do an ls, and we see our project there. We'll change directory into that project. I'll go ahead and clear this. So we need to install Node.js onto our server so that we can run npm install. You see we have this package.json and need to install the dependencies for the project. And luckily there happens to be an article on how exactly to install Node.js on the exact version of Ubuntu that our server is using, which we set up in the last video. There's just a small section that we need to implement, but I'll show you these prerequisites real quick. So before you begin, you should have a non-root user account with sudo privileges set up on your system, which we do, and that's what we set up in the last video. Also, this guide assumes that you're using the Ubuntu 20.04, which was the default version when setting up the droplet server in the first video. So we'll go down to option 2 here, where we can install Node.js with apt using a node source PPA, which is a personal package archive. And with this, we'll be able to install Node without having to also install npm separately. So I'll copy this command. Go ahead and get rid of these. Paste that in here. And you can replace the 16, by the way, for a different version of Node. My React app is with Create React App, which just requires version 14 and higher. So I'm good here. And here they want you to view the script and make sure that it's safe to run. And then once you're satisfied that the script is safe to run, then you can run it. And I'm going to assume it's safe to run because it's on this documentation still. So paste that in here, enter in a password. I did the root user and not the Andrew user. There we go. And now we'll run this to install node. We'll confirm with node-v, and we see we have version 16.16. So we now have node on our server. And now that we have node and npm, we can go to our projects directory and run npm install. Change directory into our project, and we'll run npm install. This will literally take 100 years. Added 1 million packages, 1,000 vulnerabilities. Go ahead and clear that. And now we can run npm start to start the development server. And then we can go to the IP address of our server and then go to port 3000 and view our app there. And my server's IP address is 67.205.164.88, and then I'll do port 3000. Although this won't work because we set up a firewall in the last video that closed all connections except for SSH. And like I said, we'll have to open up any connections that we want to specifically use. So we'll have to open port 3000 and allow connections to that. So I'll quit the development server and I'll run sudo ufw, which is uncomplicated firewall. I'll do allow 3000. And we see the rule is added. And now if we hit up a couple times, start that server again. And go to our server's IP address on port 3000. And we see the app is up. A friend is what the heart needs all the time. It's deep. Now this is not exactly what we want. You have to put in your server's IP address and then port 3000. You're running the development server on your server, and it doesn't sound too great. Hey man, check out my app at 67.205.164.88:3000. So we'll want to set up a domain, and we'll get to that. But first, let's create a production build of our app so we can serve up an index.html file which contains our app. We'll create that with npm run build. That's one of the scripts that comes already set up in our create React app. And then we'll replace the default index.html file on our server with the one from our React app. So I'll shut that down. So we'll also need Apache. Ubuntu is basically the server operating system. And you'll first install it on your hardware, and then you install Apache packages on it to run the Apache web server. So we'll do sudo apt install Apache 2. Put in our password. And once again, I put the password of the root user and not the more recent user. It'll let you know how much disk space will be used. You can hit Y for yes, hit enter. Now clear that. So that default index.html file should be at /var/www/html. And we'll remove that with sudo rm for remove, same path, and then the index.html. We'll confirm that's gone. Good to go. Now we'll do our npm run build. And again, this creates the build directory with a production build of our app, which will contain the index.html file. We'll run an ls on that. And we see our build folder. We'll change directory into build. Hit ls. And we see our index.html file and other assets and such. Clear that. So we'll move the build folder and everything in that, including the index.html, which holds our app, and we'll move all of that into the HTML folder that previously held the default index.html file. So we'll do a sudo and then the move command, and we'll go from the home of our server to the user to the project and the build folder, and then a star for everything inside of the build folder. And then we'll do a space, and we want to move all that into /var/www/html. And now if we do the ls on the /var/www, etc., we see it's all been moved there correctly. Beautiful. So I'll go ahead and clear that. Now we should be able to go to our server's IP address without the port 3000. And so I'll change our firewall once more to allow HTTP and HTTPS. So I'll run sudo ufw allow HTTP. Gonna get the right one this time. And I'll run that again with the HTTPS. And clear that. And so now if we go to our server's IP address without the port 3000, and it works there now too. Accept challenges so that you may feel the exhilaration of victory. It's great stuff here. Okay, so our app's officially on the server, and now it's just a matter of pointing a domain name to this server, and we'll be all set. So I'll go back into my DigitalOcean account here. Log in. So this is the server we're running on. That's the server's IP address. We'll add a domain. I have a domain that I bought in a previous video with my promo code, and that domain was shredflanders.com. And then we'll point that to our server. If you have multiple servers, you can choose from them here. And you click Add Domain. And since I have this domain on HostGator, I'll have to change my name servers to these addresses. So these three name servers will be going to these different ones. And then here we'll do a @ symbol to create the record at the root of the domain, which will direct to that server. And I'll create the record in a second, but I want to point these different name servers. So I'll go on to my HostGator account. And then we'll go to domains here. We will go to this domain that we want to use. And we have our name servers here. So instead of pointing them to the HostGator hosting, we can manually set our name servers. and then change them to these here. So I'll copy that. Put that one there. Okay, so those are all the same, 2 and 3. Paste that. I'll have to create another one. Put that in there. This will be 2, and this will be 3. Okay, so we see the name servers have updated. And I actually gave it some time. It takes about 24 to 48 hours for the name servers to propagate. And then back in the DigitalOcean, we actually don't have to add this because there's already the A record. But if you do need to add it, that's how you would have added that. And so now we can go from our server IP, we can go to shredflanders.com. The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. Well, there you have it, folks. Just follow my channel, it'll change your life forever. Let's go ahead and exit out of this server. Okay, well, I hope that helped you guys out. Feel free to like and subscribe, drop a comment and say what's up, and thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.